Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have an awesome guest on the show today. I have Steve Chiama. Steve, excited to have you on the show.
Fantastic, Gresh. Thank you very much for bringing me on.
Yes, I'm super excited to bring you on and talk about all the awesome things you're doing. Steve has done so many awesome things that, of course, we're going to have a phenomenal conversation. But before we do that, I want to read a little bit more about Steve so you can hear about some of those awesome things. And Steve has been growing businesses for over 30 years. His experience includes growing customer service businesses for large industrial equipment supply companies through his own Action Coach business coaching franchise today. One of his highlights was increasing sales for his business unit at a large industrial company by over 300% in just over a 3-year period. To achieve these sales and profit growth goals, he recruited, trained, and led a team of people with a focus on building high performance through strong communication and powerful target orientation. And one of the things I absolutely love is always having fellow podcasters, YouTubers on the show. And Steve also has his own show, the Business Spotlight Podcast, which is available on the Action Coach Western podcast, YouTube, and also the Business Spotlight USA. And one of the really cool things I saw when I was poking around and preparing for this is that he has this quote that's so powerful that I had to make sure I mentioned it, where he says, most business owners believe their identity is in the business, but a business is an asset like a house or a car. The owner is a person with a life. The ones who get that are the ones who succeed. So Steve, excited to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCL community?
Let's do it.
Let's make it happen then. So to kind of kick everything off, let's rewind the clock a little bit. Hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
You know, I went through a long, complicated history. I started working as an engineer. I actually have an engineering degree. I did a bunch of years of engineering, moved along, discovered that business is about making money. So decided to go on to the business side of things, which was a revelation, got an MBA along the way. Worked for over a 20-year period or so, worked for about 5 different companies, running business units, profit centers, if you will, ranging anywhere from $500,000 to $25 million, depending on which organization I was working with at that time. Mostly for manufacturers, but also they had construction units. And so we were involved in all of the aspects of that kind of business. Someplace along the line, I was spending an awful lot of time in airports, awful lot of time traveling. And I had a child who was reaching the preteen years. And I said, not a good plan.
Yeah.
So I want to be at home. And why don't I start making money for me instead of making money for corporations? And so I elected to look for and buy a business, and I chose an Action Coach franchise, which turned out to be a really good choice. It's a really good organization, a really outstanding set of systems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as much as I say, like, we want to know what people do, we want to know why they do it. And I think so many times that we forget that sometimes when we're, working to try to build and grow for our families, that sometimes we are away from our families and we have to kind of make that pivotal decision of saying, like, how can I sometimes to some degree think differently so I don't have to choose either or. I could do both and better. It sounds like you've been able to do that.
Yeah, a little bit. And it's a big difference is being there when the big events happen,
Yeah.
being there for the concerts, being there for the shows, being there for the big events in her life, being there to help her decide what she wanted to do about college, and not being away on an airplane someplace around the globe. And I saw her take her first step while I was sitting waiting for the driver to take me to an airport when she was before the toddler stage. I didn't want to let that happen later on. Yeah, that was the issue.
Yeah, more power to you for being able to do that. And I imagine that so many times, I imagine you probably have these conversations as well too, as people don't realize that there is an alternative. There's a different way. Sometimes we just go through autopilot, for lack of a better term, and just continue to say this is the way it has to be. But sounds like you knew that there was another opportunity there.
Yeah, and I think that's an important piece of this game is who's in control of your life and your life decisions. Are you in control, or is circumstances of some sort in control? And I think it's really important. Decide what you want and then go for that. Do what you do, go for the results. The path is not always the obvious one, but if you're going for the results, then you can make some better choices. And The result I wanted was I wanted to be at home and be a dad instead of being an absentee dad in an airport someplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been able to do an awesome job. I know we were talking a little bit before we popped on your daughter getting that opportunity to spend that time and enjoy
Hmm.
the time that you can with her is such
Hmm.
a huge thing. I'm curious, like especially you like going through that process of finding about Action Coach, like how did that go about? I imagine that you having that engineering background and being able to kind of
Hmm.
problem solve probably helps out a lot in terms of what you do for clients, but also too your process as well too.
I use the thinking process in how I work with clients a lot in terms of trying to analyze a problem and assess what are the factors that impact that problem. So, from that perspective, yes. But there's a lot about who's the individual person that I'm working with and what are their individual aspirations, and trying to help that person discover that there's a path that can get him there that's different from the one he's been taking. And the reason that becomes important is because if the one he was taking was working, he'd already be there.
Mm.
And I kind of teased a client this morning a little bit about this. They're stuck in a particular sales volume, and I pointed out their business is perfectly designed for that sales volume. That's why they're getting that result. If they want to have a different result, we got to redesign it a little bit. And that was the key that got us down the path. So, and that's how I think.
Yeah.
And that is a bit of an engineering stretch. Trying to think through what are the factors, what are the variables, how can I influence those variables, not let them be affected by chance. It's not random. What are the things we can take control of so that we can decide what the outcome needs to be and then go get that outcome. So those are the pieces I try to focus on. To me, that comes from my engineering thinking, and then the vocabulary and the tools come from the MBA thinking and the 20 years of hard knocks, um, finding out the hard way what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What they say, a lot of the lessons and wise things that we say and can recite and know are from some very hard lessons that we potentially
Uh huh.
had to go through
Uh
early
huh.
on. So,
Uh huh.
that's what life, has a tendency to do. So I'm super curious, were you so like why you were, knowing that you wanted to make this transition, before you chose Action Coach, were you coaching yourself doing that engineering, like problem solve, trying to figure it out, and that's what kind of led you there?
Yeah. Yes. The MBA taught me an awful lot of good stuff, but it didn't teach me how to make money.
Yeah.
The engineering thinking process helped me assess that whatever it was I was doing at that moment was getting me a result. It's system. And all I had to do was sit down and say, what's not getting me what I want, and find another way to do it. And that took a little bit of work. I really upset an organization one time when I sat down and took about 800 pieces of data from the past and analyzed it to look for a trend, and then found where the trend was and actually used the math that I had used in engineering to define a formula for pricing stuff. And it was amazing. It was completely different from the way the assigned estimating department wanted to estimate it. But when you sat down and looked at the truth, that was what worked.
Mm.
And if we were there to make profit, we had to work with what worked, not with what some theory said it needed to be. So it's some interesting lessons learned along the way. And you pick these hard knocks up and you sit there and say, where else can I use them? Who else can I share that kind of thinking for so that they can enjoy a good result?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. And I imagine that's what the conversations that you're having with those clients is to be able to kind of look at those things differently, ask those questions, and even sometimes even I feel like go back to your why, go back to the result of the goal, because we very
Ah,
quickly can get lost in, and I imagine you probably have had conversations where sometimes we fall in love with our product or service and we forget about
yes.
why we actually created that product or service.
Yes, yeah, and it isn't just the why of making money.
Hmm.
The money's the scorecard.
Yeah.
How many customers did you successfully help? And the money becomes a scorecard, or are you doing a good job? If you're doing a good job, the money goes up.
Yeah, absolutely. So perfect. I would love to drill down a little bit more, hear a little bit more on how you're working with and serving your clients and having these great
Sure.
conversations. Could you take me through a little bit more on what that looks like?
It's so variable. It's hard to do a case. Um, I think the one that I'm enjoying the one of the ones I'm enjoying the most right now is a gentleman who owned a business, a trades business for a really long period of time. Um, and is starting to realize there's an end.
Mm.
He doesn't want to do this for a whole lot more years. He has other things he wants to do with his life. Now, in his particular case, and what's making it more interesting is he's had a little bit of experience doing a little bit of real estate investing. And it hasn't been a really hard leap intellectually for him to see the business the same as a piece of investment real estate. So I think that made a transition so much easier because that's really what it is. A business isn't it's a piece of paper that represents an asset. It's not you, or it doesn't have to be you unless you're looking for a job. And so this becomes a major difference is your if your why is to have a job, then your future is certainly a monthly income, but there's no big lump available at the end. If your why is to create a system that will continue to produce results for clients in the future beyond your participation, now you've built an asset. And now the question is, how massive an asset do you want in your time with the company? And then what's a path that will take us there? And after that, it's a matter of sitting down and looking at what are the variables that drive that. And then what are the strategies that we can impose for each of those different variables? I tend to think of five principal variables that we talk about. One being numbers of leads, one being conversion rate, how efficiently do you convert those leads to clients? One being how many times can you attract clients back to buy from you over and over and over again in the course of a year? Another being how much can you help them buy? And the fifth one being how efficiently can you operate that system? And if you sit down and work it out, there's a whole bundle of strategies for each one of those five variables, which are the 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 that are best for your business, your industry, and your situation where you are right now. So we can sit down with that kind of a thinking process and then we build a business around it. How many people do we need to do how many things?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I imagine that depending on, again, like where you're trying to go, you're trying to make X dollars or you're trying to free up
Hmm.
X time, the
Hmm.
answers or the tools that you'll even use to achieve like those five, principles and pillars will probably vary and change, I imagine.
Yes, yes, very much. Yeah, what works for a three-person company is not what works for a 30-person
Mm,
company, is not what works for a 300-person company.
right.
Yeah, there's definitely evolution along the way. And if you really sit down and think about it, that's the owner's job
Um,
is to sit down and control that exact thinking. It's not his job to have the hammer and nails in his hands. It's his job to control the things that bring customers in and the things to satisfy
yeah.
those customers. So it's really who's the one who puts their finger on the strategies? Well, it's CEO.
Yeah, that's such a huge thing, and I love that you spoke about that identity part, and I don't know, I imagine you probably have these conversations as well too. Is like I always say, like
Oh yeah.
when you're starting, especially if you're a starting CEO or starting founder or owner or whatever title we might
Hmm.
give, you're very embedded sometimes in the culture and the
Mhm.
things that you're doing. You're putting your blood, sweat, and tears and everything
Mhm.
into it, that it becomes so
Mhm.
easy for that to become you, that becomes your baby. You hear that a lot of times when people, talk about their
Mhm.
business, but it's also that ego piece as well too, is like if we again don't become so identified with it that we need it, that it's necessary for us to be a part of it. It's also necessary for the business to be a part of it. We aren't really building the business in the way that we should, and we have to kind of dampen our ego to realize we can put people in place that are bigger and better and badder at all the things that we do. And if we're able to make that dampening of our ego, then I think it allows that opportunity for the business to really flourish, and on a deeper level, the mission, what we probably had in the beginning, to actually come to fruition.
Yes. A question I put to some of my clients, the ones that are ready for this leap, is there's probably 330, 350 million people in this country.
Hmm.
Do you think there might be one that can be better at that task than you are?
How many times do you get no?
A
Do
few.
you? Yeah.
Yes, a few.
Yeah, that's where we have to dampen that ego, right? Yes. Yeah. But
Yeah,
it's so
yeah.
funny because and that's why I love like kind of everything that you're doing. And I wonder if this also kind of like, feeds into your secret sauce of your ability, you having the background in engineering, the MBA, and of course the experience, being able to kind of see the forest for the tree. Because I think so many times, like when we're going through tasks, when we're doing things, we're saying no one can do this like I can do this. But when you start
Right.
to say there's that many people in the world, is there not one person? You start to realize that you're so close to it. And sometimes I don't know if we
Yeah,
overestimate our abilities or whatever it is, but we realize that we're not seeing the full picture. We're not seeing what they're ultimately trying to
right.
do. Do you feel like your ability to see that and, of course, help people execute that is part of that secret sauce?
Yeah, I think that actually is my most important role is to help them see the context. They are the visionary, not the doer. Build on the vision. Don't build on the skill. Don't try to become the very best at whatever you are trying to do. Make your mission finding the best, building the best, training the best, and satisfying the most number of customers that can be satisfied within whatever technology or whatever business concept that you've got. But that also invites that sometimes you got to stop and ask the question, is this business the best design? Is this really the best idea? Or have I boxed myself into a very narrow, small little niche? And while I've got a really good skill and a really good thing to offer, should I look a little bit to the side and say, is there a better path to go down?
Hmm.
So sometime once in a while, we have to redesign the concept so that there's a bigger, better, more lucrative opportunity. Meaning, what that means is there's more people to serve.
Yeah, absolutely. That
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's such a huge thing, and I think so many times, as I always say, like as much as we're building the business, we're building ourselves as well too. We're evolving, we're changing, we're
Hmm.
growing. Things are
Hmm.
happening personally and professionally, and all those things as we're kind of going through the time with the business. But I also don't think we kind of evaluate enough or pay attention enough, maybe is a better way to say it, to the business as well, kind of evolving, the industry evolving, just all those things. And I think it's such a powerful thing to realize or be able to kind
Hmm.
of look up and ask those questions like, hey, I'm pushing, I'm doing the things, I'm doing, X, Y, and Z, but is this still the mission? Is this still the way to do it? Is there a better way? Is there more technology or is there more people? Whatever it is, asking those questions of, is there a better way to do this? And I think that's such a powerful thing to be able to ask.
Does the buggy whip manufacturer concept come to mind?
Yeah.
There are still manufacturers of buggy whips. What I don't know is, are they making the same number or Maybe pure.
Yeah. Yeah, quite possible. I mean, you look at these, the buggy whips, you look at people like, blockbusters of the
Mhm.
world, that
Uh-huh.
didn't necessarily evolve and change. And, you look at Netflix versus Blockbuster, at the end of the day, somebody sitting at home and they're watching a movie or they're watching a show, it's still being able to serve, but it's a completely different way to approach it. And I think if we kind of get so locked in and not realize that there's
Mhm.
changes and opportunity to continue to kind of test out, evolve, and do all those things,
Exactly. Yeah.
we're potentially sacrificing our overall mission of what we wanted to do.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you think about the fax machine.
Mhm.
There was a moment in time where all of a sudden a whole lot of people had to get a whole lot of fax
Yeah.
machines. How many fax machines do you think they sell today?
Not quite as much for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the thing we've moved along. There's the paper isn't as nearly dominant a tool. I still use paper. I got a notepad sitting right
Mhm.
here, but it's not nearly as dominant a tool as it was, what, 2 decades ago?
Yeah.
So these are the things that you've gotta watch out for. And the life of a product might be just a decade or 2,
Mhm.
depending on what actual industry you're in. And if you think about this geographic area, how many high-tech companies are doing their darndest to make stuff obsolete?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's very important that we're kind of, stay aware of that. It's funny because I think, we were both in a networking group, and I think somebody came to a networking group when I first started. I remember he gave me an analogy where he said a lot of times we're like kids on the jungle gym, where in
Mhm,
order to swing to the next rung, we have to let go of the previous rung. But
mhm.
sounds so crazy to have yourself just stuck on saying, "Hey, I want to move forward, but I'm not letting go of any rung." When in reality,
Well,
that's how you go.
that's a really awesome example. That analogy is exactly correct. If you've ever tried the monkey bars, that's the vision that comes to my
Yeah.
mind, exactly that. You can't get to that
Yeah.
one without letting go of that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like we're doing
Yeah.
the same thing. We're saying, hey, I want to
Mhm,
evolve. I want the company to be progressive. I want to do all these things in the
mhm,
future, but I'm still holding on to the paper. I'm not letting go of the
mhm,
paper. I'm still,
mhm,
creating videos where people have to go into a store and rent them out.
mhm,
Those are the things
mhm.
that we have to pay attention to. So I love that you're having those conversations, asking those questions, and helping people to be aware of actually where their words, their mission, and their actions are
Yeah,
actually all in alignment.
yeah. There's a book I'm reading
Uh-huh.
now that, I think is doing I won't say it's changing my way of approaching some of this, but it's affecting, um, maybe how I explain it to people. The name of the book is Buy Back Your
Mhm.
Time, and it makes a couple of really interesting points. One is that if you're hiring and you're hiring for capacity, you might be looking at the wrong thing.
Mhm.
Hiring to replace yourself in a relatively low value role so you can spend more time in a relatively higher value role is probably a more important consideration.
Mhm.
Yes, capacity, but we've got to identify what exactly is the bottleneck and what exactly is the value of the roles that are being looked at there. Um, and I think that's that how you value your time is incredibly important. Your time as a doer is not nearly as value productive as a strategist. Now, there's obviously when you're in the very, very, very early small stages, now we've got to start talking about percentages of time.
Mhm.
How much time here, how much time here, how much time here, because you are the business. But the whole point is if you want to get beyond that stage, you've got to recognize which pieces to let go of. And there are more and more and more and more opportunities to let go of time relatively inexpensively, ranging anywhere from virtual people offshore
Mhm.
to automations.
Mhm.
There are more and more and more things. No, you're not going to cut hair and you're not going to hammer nails remotely. You're going to have to do that locally, but there's still who's answering the phone?
Yeah.
Are you answering your own phone while you're supposed to be putting nails into wood,
Mhm.
as an example? Well, if you're answering your own phone, then you're causing yourself to not be as productive, aren't you?
Yeah.
And these are "Oh, but I've got to." Really?
Yeah.
Let's go back to how many people in the world are there?
Right, right, right. Absolutely. And that's such a
Yeah.
powerful thing. I appreciate that CEO hack. I've seen that book. I haven't actually, opened up that book. And I
Mhm.
love that just because I think it makes us look at our role in what we're doing and where we should be spending time. And when you kind of reframe
Yes.
that, you start to say that, okay, I'm hiring for X position. And then you
Yes.
start to say, how is that going to help me maybe leverage or spend more time in my superpower, my genius, where I should be? And you start to
Yes.
reconfigure how you're looking at things. And as you said so well, I mean, that could be hiring a person that's going to be sitting in the office. That could be someone that's virtual on the other side of the world that's doing the work. It could be an automation or technology that can replace that. But I think if we start to value our time more and realize that the thing we should be doing more of is not hammering, but thinking about how to set up the boards that are going to actually be hammered, then I think that allows us to really be at a level and make an impact that we ultimately can in no other way that anybody else can.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The opportunities are amazing, but it's a matter of sitting down and understanding what's your real purpose here.
Yeah.
What's your real contribution?
Hmm.
Your contribution isn't to be the one putting nails into wood.
Yeah.
Your contribution is to getting to a place where there's enough wood to have nails put into
Mhm.
in enough different places and serve enough different customers doing that and getting the people to do it for you.
Yeah.
Doing it yourself is probably not the best use of your time
Yeah. That's such a powerful
long term.
thing. Yeah. I'm thinking of like a house that's being built and you got literally one board and said, I have to
Mhm.
hammer this board because I know exactly how to hammer the board. And you look around, you hammer the board in, there's no other boards that are around and you don't even
Yeah,
have the
right.
house to be built. So if we're not focusing on those right things, we can't build the momentum, have that impact that we want to have.
Who can have the most impact? The one guy who's building the house himself or the guy who runs Toll Brothers?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are two extreme, and the guy that runs Toll Brothers, and I've had a Toll Brothers home,
Hmm.
um, in a different part of the country.
Hmm.
The guy who runs Toll Brothers started small,
Yeah.
but he had a different vision. He had a vision of how many people can I put into homes? And that changes what he does.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I almost wonder, like in alignment with that book and what you just said, that CEO hack is not just delegating for delegating's sake. It sounds like attaching that vision to the delegation
Mhm,
or the automation or
mhm,
whatever that might be to save your time is
yeah.
really what is that CEO hack.
Yeah, that's a very good way to start thinking of it. Your job as CEO or visionary is to get more customers served, not to be unless your entire goal is to be the best that there can be putting nails into wood. If that's your goal, okay, that's a fair enough goal. That's an honorable goal. But for somebody who wants a real business, how many customers can you put into homes?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and that helps you to start looking at everything differently because it's not even always
Yeah.
like, charging the most necessarily because you can charge less because you have a better and more efficient system, as we talked about those 5 parts
Ah,
to be able to
yeah,
impact
yeah,
more people, and you can still start to look at things differently and start to, for lack of a better term, play or adjust, those different,
yeah.
pillars that you talked about before.
Well, we'll touch on that because that's actually a very interesting point.
Mhm,
People keep saying small businesses cost less.
mhm.
The only reason they cost less is because the owners have enslaved themselves
Uh,
by not taking an income except what might be left over at the end of the day. That is the only reason they cost less. There is actually a phrase out there called economy of
mm,
scale. Big companies can cost less than small companies
mm,
when they're operated honestly at the honest level of cost. Now that isn't to say they all do. Now we're getting into a conversation about shareholders
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
operators and a few other governance issues and a few other interesting topics. But the capacity is there. Now you can buy in bulk and spread it out. Now you can hire in bulk. Now you can focus people in and they can get really, really, really good at one thing as they learn more and more and more. And your business can be far more efficient than a one person, three person, five-person business can be
Yeah.
in that same industry.
Yeah, that's such a powerful thing, and I love that you talked about, it sounds like, being able to kind of understand the journey of entrepreneurship. I even, use analogy
Mhm.
of the metaphor because I think a lot of times you using that phrase can, charge less is such a powerful thing because when you maybe are in day one, you're not going to have the economies of scale to be able to do that. But if you know that that's one of the
Correct.
goals, you can continue to kind of innovate, improve
Yeah.
the technology you're using, the time that you're using, and then all of a sudden
Yes.
that you can start charging less because you've been able to kind of duplicate or replicate or whatever it is, the thing that you're
Yes.
doing to be able to reach and impact more people.
Yes, yeah. There's all kinds of opportunities, and it's just a matter of sitting down and getting out of in your word, getting out of the weeds
Yeah.
and getting into the what's the vision and what's the strategy and how do we fulfill that strategy?
Yeah, I love that. And so you might have already touched on this, but I want to ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. A little bit more word of wisdom or piece of advice. I like to say it might be something you would tell your favorite client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Ah, what I would tell my younger business self is I should have done this in 2001. I lost a job in 2001 and took another job in a different company in a different industry, more or less doing exactly the same thing. Um, and I had a lot of, I got to admit, I had a lot of fun and I learned a lot and I saw a lot and did a lot that I never would have seen. But gosh, if I had gone off into running my own business then, where would I be
Um,
today? And I think the nugget that you're reaching for is don't postpone a good decision.
mm,
Do it if it's aching, do it now.
mhm. I love that.
Don't wait.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so many times that, people wait for the perfect time, to make that
Yeah.
decision, and the reality that that doesn't always happen. But for people that might be listening to this, you said, don't postpone that good decision. How do you know it's a good decision, or is a good decision like one of those things where like you said, it's aching, it's whispering to you, it's raining down, all those things are happening where it's like I have to at least try this. Do you feel like that's what you would consider to be a good decision?
Yes, yes. I think you gotta sit down and do some homework around the good decision. You gotta sit there and say, "What are the numbers?
Yeah.
And how do I make those numbers work for me?" But I recall at that particular moment, I was gifted with a opportunity to be in a outplacement service.
Mhm.
And when I finished that program, which was a very good program, when I finished that program, I think they were disappointed that I just took another job like the one I had had before and hadn't realized the talent that I had developed, the abilities that I had developed,
Mm,
and the potential that I could have taken if I'd only had the courage
mm,
to step out of my own box.
mm.
I had built a box around myself that was comfortable and went looking to recreate what I had been doing.
Yeah.
And that,
Mm.
where's the where is the real contribution of staying in your own comfortable box?
Yeah, that's such a powerful. I appreciate you so much and drilling down and expanding upon that because I think so many times like we have these comfort zones and those comfort zones can be big, they could be super small, but they're still comfort zones regardless of how we look at it. And we sometimes aren't aware that we're staying in our comfort zone. As you said so well, like a lot of times we have products and services that we're providing, and we don't want to swing to the next rung because we're comfortable in terms of doing that, or we're working
Exactly.
with the same clients and customers. We haven't tried to do anything differently or thought
Yes.
differently or use this technology or use that. There's so many different ways we can get outside of our comfort zone. And I think so many
Yeah.
times we think that we have to make a huge leap to do that. But sometimes it's just, let me do some research. Let me test this out. Let me do it on a small scale. And I think if
Yes.
we don't give ourselves space to do that, then not only we do ourselves a disservice, we're doing a disservice to the people we can ultimately serve.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
No pain, no gain.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that.
Yeah.
So now I want to ask you one of my absolute favorite questions, which is definition of what it means to be a CEO. And our goal is to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Steve, what does being a CEO mean to you?
All right. So I'm going to play with the word CEO from an entire and from probably from a very different side than most of the people you talk to. Because I come from a corporate environment. And when I think of chief executive officer, that means there have to be other executive
Hmm.
officers. And what's an executive officer? Well, at least it's a manager of managers and probably a manager of managers before executive is kind of a meaningful term. So to me, the term CEO implies an organization perhaps of several hundred people. It might be several hundred people scattered over a broad geography, or it might be several hundred people in that building over there. But still, you've got a complicated organization. So when I think CEO, that's what I'm really thinking of, and might even have a board of directors. Um, that said, even a one person business has to have a leader and a visionary. So the CEO is that visionary. And then the question is, given the size of the organization and the scope of the organization, how much of his time is being spent on the visionary? It's not 100% if he's one person business. It's probably 5% or 10%. So we got to sit down and think, where are we in that life cycle of a business? But I think CEO really becomes meaningful in the case of a 500-person business more than it becomes in a five-person business. But it's a popular title.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that definition because I think to some degree it also kind of reminds us whether we're one person, three person, 10 person, 499 people, or whatever, we're trying to get to that 500, whatever that is, it becomes that aspiration. But I love the
Uh-huh.
question that you asked within it because you start to look at, a CEO of 500-person company, you have managers of managers of managers, as you said so well, you start to realize that that CEO is probably spending 100%, 99, 90% of the time on strategic thinking and setting the vision and things. So, as someone that may not have that many people, or even if it's not people, if it's technology, it's automations, things that are taking things off your plate, how much time are you actually spending on those strategic CEO things? And I think it helps us to
Right.
know like what we could do to kind of get there.
Right question. And I think that's where we all collectively in the small business zone forget.
Yeah.
We need to be strategic. And sometimes we need somebody around us to remind us we need to think strategically, and we need to be looking at what I'm doing is producing this,
Uh,
and I want more.
right.
So how do I get from this to more? And that's really what I mean by strategic.
Yeah.
Not wishes and dreams, but I'm here quantitatively. I want to be here quantitatively. What do I have to change to make that true?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I,
And then again, and then again, and then again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine even the people that have the CEOs of the 500 plus, companies, they have all those people in place because they aren't supposed to be spending time on those things. And I think even
Yes,
they probably go through filtering their day and say like, why am I answering this email? Why am I, booking my own travel? Why am I doing these things? Because that's taking time away from what I should be doing to make sure the shareholders are happy and make sure the clients and customers are
exactly.
happy.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So when I think CEO, there's the definition I think along is are we really a CEO? Are we hammering nails? Or are we thinking about how do we get more nails into more pieces of wood in more locations?
Absolutely.
If we're thinking about the second, then we're thinking CEO. If we're doing the first, nah,
Yeah.
we're a technician.
Yeah, absolutely. We know about the E-myth and how powerful that is.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Well, Steve,
Yeah.
truly appreciate that definition. Of course, I appreciate your time even more. So what I wanted to do now was pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know, and of how best people can get a hold of you, connect with you, find out about your show, your podcast, all the awesome things you're doing as well too.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Gresh. For a nugget, I'm going to go back to something we've touched around several
Hmm.
times in this conversation, and that is, what is your why?
Mm.
Um, Simon Sinek's book, Start with Why. Where are you? Why are you doing this? And where are you trying to take it? And what will it do for you? I think that's perhaps the most important set of questions that need to be thought through by any, I don't care what you call them, CEO, president, COO, owner, founder, any of those titles. That person needs to be in that mindset. For getting a hold of me, several easy ways to do it. I'm at Action Coach Western Fairfax. And all you have to do is look that up that way on Google and you'll get to the right place. You can look me up in LinkedIn at Steve Chiama. That will bring you right to my page on LinkedIn. And there's a pretty good amount of information about me and what I do on there. The podcast I'm doing is the Business Spotlight Podcast. And I'm doing this in collaboration with a bunch of other Action Coach franchise owners around the country. And in fact, in several other countries, we're all kind of working together to do this, not as an Action Coach venture, but as our own collaborative effort to help more business owners see that we are a community and see through people's challenges that their challenges are not so unique, that
Mm.
other people are working on exactly the same things, and that we depend on each other to see new ways to get better at what we're doing. Because what we're doing is kind of an obscure profession. There are schools for all this other stuff. There is not a school that I know of for small business owners
Mm.
other than coaching organizations like myself. So that's really what we're trying to bring together and to share a little bit of the wisdom, a little bit of the, would you rather learn from somebody else's scars or your own?
Yeah.
And that's a big part of what it's all about. And so, Gresh, I really appreciate you bringing me on the show and having the opportunity to share these little tidbits with people. Um, I hope they found them helpful. I hope they found them amusing. But also, I hope they found them inspirational so that they can do something better with what they've got.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you so much, Steve. And of course, to make it even easier, we're going to have the links and information in the show notes. And I appreciate you so much, and especially leaving us with that last nugget around like knowing what your why is. And I think a lot of times, even for me, like I think one of the things I'm most excited around collaboration, having people on the show, getting to sharpen the saw a
Mhm.
little bit, is it opens up that collaboration piece and opportunity to kind of
Yeah.
see things from a different perspective. But on a deeper level, as you said, and you all are collaborating and on in the YouTube space as well too, is
Mhm.
being able to say that, hey, my problem is not just my problem. There's someone that is going through my
Uh-huh.
problem. And on a deeper level, there's a solution to that problem. And I think the more we can get that
Yes.
information out there, the more prepared, the more successful that business owners, CEOs, entrepreneurs, CEOs, all these titles will ultimately be, because we're aligned with
Yes.
our why. And then we have the community that we can kind of lean into to get in and see further. So appreciate you so much in doing that. Appreciate your time, of course, as well. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you, Gresh. Have a fantastic weekend. I appreciate you taking time to put me on your show.
Absolutely.